Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Hausdorff Reads the Bible. Today I'm reading Genesis 30, and our first section is a continuation from last time, a section called Jacob's Children. And just to remind you where we came from, Jacob has two wives who happen to be sisters. Rachel, who he loves and is beautiful, and Leah, who he hated, apparently because she's ugly. It wasn't clear, but that seems to be what they base things on in these stories. And of course, God gave the beautiful one no children that he loved, and the one that is hated a bunch of children. So that's apparently God decided that children should definitely come from someplace void of love, and any place with love should not have children. I don't know why he would make that decision, but that seems to be what he's done. So the first 24 verses of today's reading is a continuation of this section, and the short version is that this is basically just a bunch of daytime TV nonsense with, women fighting over a guy and a bunch of children and a guy banging a bunch of chicks. But near the end, we come to another section that has some biblical genetics that, I would argue, prove that the people that wrote this Bible didn't know what was going on. The very idea that this is sort of divinely inspired or divinely authored, and then they would come up with this way of how traits are passed on, I would argue it proves that it can't be divine. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go ahead and dig right in to the Jerry Springer portion of this episode. So, verse 1. When Rachel saw that she bore... When Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister. She said to Jacob, "Give me children, or I shall die." Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, "Am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" Fruit of the womb. Then she said, "Here is my servant Bilhah. Go into her, so that she may give birth on my behalf, that even I may have children through her." Now, this is something we've seen before. Abraham and Sarah were having trouble having children, and so Abraham had sex with her servant Hagar and wound up having a kid. And then it's this ancient... it's apparently the way they did things back then, because, you've got to pass on your seed, and it counts as from the woman... If it's through her maid. I don't really know how they figured that out, but that's the way they did it. I kind of suspect that these rules might have been written by the men of this culture. It's like, oh yeah, if we don't have children, I get to bang your maid. Anyway. So now Jacob is up to 3 women that he's sleeping with, which, good for him, I guess. Moving forward. Verse 4. So she gave him to her servant Bilhah as a wife, and Jacob went into her. And Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, "God has judged me, and has also heard my voice and given me a son." Therefore she called his name Dan. So I guess God's judged her well because he gave her this son, even though it's not from her. But I guess for the bragging rights or whatever, it counts as from her. Like I said, this whole thing is a little bit hard to follow, but basically, think Jerry Springer, and that sort of fixes everything. Okay, continuing on, verse 7. Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again, and bore Jacob a second son. So, apparently it's not just the one, he's now just regularly having sex with these 3 women. Then Rachel said, "With mighty wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister and have prevailed." So she called his name Naphtali. So, yeah, clearly there's a big competition here for Jacob's attention. When Leah saw that she had ceased bearing children, she took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Then Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son, and Leah said, "Good fortune has come," so she called his name Gad. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son, and Leah said, "Happy am I, for women have called me happy," so she called his name Asher. Again, Jacob now sleeping with 4 women, apparently regularly, having sex with a lot of them. A point I Oh, maybe that's going to come in a minute. Never mind. Moving forward. Verse 14. In the days of the wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother, Leah. Then Rachel said, Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes. But she said to her, it's a small matter that you would have taken away my husband. Wait, is it a small matter that you would have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also? Rachel said, then he may lie with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes. So they're clearly vying for this guy's attention, and she's trading a night of sex with they're both married to him, but she's trading a night of sex for mandrakes. So, good, I guess. I don't know. When Jacob came to the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, you must come into me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes. So he lay with her that night. So he's like, yeah, whatever, ladies, like, if you want to have the argument and then tonight I get to sleep with someone, I don't care. I mean, that apparently, because he didn't seem to have any input here, or he didn't care. He was just like, yeah, whatever. And God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. Leah said, God has given me my wages because I gave my servant to my husband, so he called his name Issachar. And Leah conceived again, and she bore Jacob a sixth son. Then Leah said, God has endowed me with a good endowment. Now my husband will honor me because I have borne him six sons. So she called him Zebulun. Afterwards she bore a daughter, called her Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. She had conceived and bore a son, and said, God has taken away my reproach. And she called the name Joseph, saying, may the Lord add to me another son. So that's the end of that section. And like I said, I mean, there's a lot of little details there, but I think the general thing is there's these two women who are fighting over their co-husband. I don't know what you would call co-husband. Fine, whatever. But this thing at the end here. So first of all, you got tons of kids, which is all right. I guess that's fine. But I think it's funny that at the end here, Rachel wound up having a child anyway, and yet they had previously decided that she was barren. It seems like they'd just come to this conclusion too fast in the Bible. I mean, I've said this before, but we know that people in modern times will often just have trouble getting pregnant. And, people will try for a long time before, and then they'll go to a fertility clinic and they'll try some more, and it's this big, horrible thing for some people. It's this big trying deal because you want children, you can't have them. You can imagine that being a very difficult thing to deal with. It seems like they might just jump to this conclusion too soon because clearly she wasn't barren. Of course, in the story, God had made her barren, and then he made her, he opened up her womb later so she could have kids, but maybe they're just having trouble having kids. I mean, it doesn't mean that... If I take a step back, I think it's pretty clear that, they just didn't get pregnant right away. But as is easier to do than to say that you have some problem, it's easier to blame it on a God, I guess. Oh, God must not want me to have kids, or he does want me to have kids, or whatever. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. And we are going to a section called Jacob's Prosperity. And this, as I said at the top, at least I think I did, I would argue that this proves that this is not divinely inspired, because clearly they have no idea what's going on. It makes sense to read it as some ancient people who didn't understand how genetics work at all, but there's no reason that God would have put something like this in here. So let's go ahead and dig in. Jacob's Prosperity, verse 25. As soon as Rachel had borne Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away that I may go to my own home and country. Give me my wives and my children, for whom I have served you, that I may go, for you know the service that I have given you." So, it makes sense. He's come to this land to get a wife. He's got a big family now, and he wants to take them and go back to the home of his father, where God has promised him all this land. I mean, so, it seems like a pretty reasonable request at this point. But Laban said to him, "If I have found favor in your sight, I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. Name your wages, and I will give it." And Jacob said to him, You yourself know how I have served you, and how your livestock has fared with me. For you had little before I came, and it has increased abundantly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I turned. But now when shall I provide for my own household also?" So basically he said, God's here, he's blessing me, he's helping me out, and I'm working for you, so you are getting all this benefit of God's blessing. And I guess predictably so, Laban doesn't really want to give this up, because, why would you want to let him go if he's the result of you doing so well? So I can understand where Laban's coming from, except clearly taking it too far, because everything about him in these stories leads us to believe he's a huge dick. Verse 31. He said, "What shall I give you?" Jacob said. "You shall not give me anything. If you will do this for me, I will again pasture your flock and keep it. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep and every black lamb, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and they shall be my wages." Okay, so, again, I'm going to read that last verse again, but they're talking about what Jacob should get paid, because, he's basically worked for him for all this time, and Laban says, "What do you want for doing all that work?" And Jacob says, again, "Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep, every black lamb, the spotted and speckled among the goats, and they shall be my wages." So, clearly he's saying, I'm going to go through, I don't think it's possible I'm missing something big here, but he's saying, I want to go through the flocks and take all of the, let's just summarize it and say spotted animals, and those will be his pay, and he'll take that. So that seems to be what that says. That's literally what verse 32 says, and I even did a translation search, looked at how other translations said it, and it really seems to parse the same. Anyway, moving forward. So my honesty will answer for me later when you come to look into my wages with you. Every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and black among the lamb, if found with me, shall be counted stolen. So he's saying, look, I'm going to take all of the spotted livestock, and then if you come and look at my flock later, and there's ones that aren't spotted in there, then those are supposed to be yours, and we'll say that I stole them from you. So that's the deal that we're going to make. Laban said, "Good, let it be as you have said." But that day Laban removed the male goats that were striped and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had white on it, and every lamb that was black, and put them in charge of his sons. And he set a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob pastured the rest of Laban's flock. So basically, Laban said, yes, that's a great deal, but then he quickly he separated all the ones that would have gone to Jacob, and he gave them to his sons and had them go far away, so that now Jacob has this flock that's only, solid color. So it seems like Laban has really broken the deal, because the way it reads to me now, since Laban did that quickly, Jacob should go out to the flock, see 0 spotted sheep, and just be like, well, I get nothing. But that's not what happens. He breeds some and then gets it later. So my only thing is that, again, verse 32, let me pass through your flock today, removing from it, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know if it's not supposed to be today. If you replace that with, I will do that next year or in a season or something, however long it takes to get a couple generations of sheep going, then it would make sense. And so I looked to the commentaries for this, and Jamieson, Fawcett, and Brown, so their take on it was as follows. The deal is supposed to be, according to them, the deal was Laban was going to do what he did, take away all the spotted sheep, and then Jacob was going to have a flock of only solid sheep, and then they will breed, and whichever ones come out spotted from that, that's what Jacob gets. And Laban was quick to do this because, obviously, this is a good deal. Spotted sheep generally give birth to spotted sheep, and speckled ones give birth to speckled ones. And, of course, there's crossover sometimes. We all know that it's because of recessive traits and stuff, but they didn't know that then. But the whole deal was Laban was happy because this is clearly heavily in his favor, and Jacob was fine with it because he trusted God to fix it. That was Jamieson, Fawcett, and Brown's take. And obviously that makes some sense because it fits with what actually happens. I just don't see how it fits with the setup that was described. So either there's something that I'm just missing, and Jamieson, Fawcett, and Brown's take is the way it is supposed to be. And like I said, it fits with what comes next. I found it really peculiar because it doesn't fit with verse 32 at all. Anyway, let's go ahead and assume that their take is correct because, like I said, it fits with what happens next. So, again, at this point in time, Jacob has this flock that has no spotted sheep at all, and whichever offspring are spotted will be his, and whichever ones aren't spotted will be Laban's. Okay, moving forward, and here's where it starts getting ridiculous. So, if you kind of half pay attention, this is a good handful of verses to really listen to. Okay, verse 37. Then Jacob took fresh sticks of poplar and almond and plane trees and peeled white streaks in them, exposing the white of the sticks. He set the sticks that he had peeled in front of the flocks in the troughs, that is, the watering places where the flocks came to drink. And since they bred when they came to drink, the flocks bred in front of the sticks, so that the flocks brought forth striped, speckled, and spotted. And Jacob separated the lambs. And okay, let's hold off there. So if you didn't quite follow that, he knows that the sheep mate in front of the place where they drink water, and so he took a bunch of sticks, peeled them so that they would have stripes and spots on them. And since they were looking at them when they were mating, their offspring had stripes and spots. So that's there in the Bible. Clearly, so again, as I said before, if these are just some, shepherds, some ancient shepherds who obviously don't understand anything about the way these work, you could imagine, and they have a relatively small sample size here, it's possible that the sheep that they had all had the recessive trait, and it just so happened that after this time, when they bred, there was just more than usual striped and spotted offspring, and they say, oh, it must have been those sticks. Because they don't know what they're talking about. I mean, why not? Why wouldn't they come to that conclusion? We're pattern-seeking animals. But, so that's fine. If you take this as the Word of God, it's ridiculous. And that's, I think, how a lot of these stories always wind up being. This is just a really perfect example. If this is the Word of God, it makes no sense. If it's some primitive guys who didn't really understand how the world works, it makes perfect sense. All right. So that's genetics according to the Bible. Anyway, carrying forward. Verse 40. And Jacob separated the lambs and set the faces of the flocks towards the striped and all the black in the flock of Laban. He put his own droves apart and did not put them with Laban's flock. Whenever the stronger of the flock were breeding, Jacob would lay the sticks in the troughs before the eyes of the flock that they might breed among the sticks. But for the feebler of the flock, he would not lay them there. So the feebler would be Laban's and the stronger Jacob's. Thus the man increased greatly and had large flocks, female servants, male servants, and camels and donkeys. I don't know why they threw in those other things. But anyway, so not only did he arrange things, with his sticks, not only did he arrange things so that he would have a bunch of, that a bunch of the livestock would come out with stripes and spots so that he would get them, but he arranged it so that the weak ones would not be looking at sticks when they bred, and the strong ones would be, so that he would sort of be giving himself the stronger and giving Laban the weaker. Which is why I said it must be multiple generations of these livestock. I have no idea how long it takes for this to happen, but I'm assuming it's a few years, right? But whatever, that doesn't matter. The point I want to make is Jacob and Laban, once again, are very dishonest with each other. They make this deal, which seems, it's a little peculiar, but basically they're going to take the flock and they're going to divvy it up between them because they've both worked really hard to get the flock up to this point. And so they get this deal that seems pretty equitable. Laban tries to cheat by taking away the ones that would be Jacob's, and he gives them to his sons and has them deal with him far away. So that's really dishonest. And then Jacob does this thing so that he makes sure that he gets the strong ones and Laban gets the weaker ones. Again, very dishonest. So, yeah, they really don't seem to be role models to me. But whatever. More importantly is the ridiculous science in this thing. It's just, I just really have trouble reading this and understanding why somebody would look at this and think that it's divinely inspired. It's so ridiculous. All right, well, anyway, that's today's reading. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you next time.